Hey, welcome to Whitecap, the Canadian Sailing Podcast. Today, we're talking of Canada's first foray into the America's Cup since 1987. First, I want to welcome return guest Isabella Bertold, skipper of Canada's entry in the first ever Women's America's Cup. And later in the show, we've got Andrew Wood and Georgia Lewin-LaFrance, who represented the Great White North in the Youth America's Cup. Isabella, welcome.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me.
So this is not going to be a deep dive into your stellar dinghy career, your cookbook, your pro cycling, or the name of the yacht club in Summerside where you won the Canada Games. But this is about leading a Concord Pacific team at the, Women's America's Cup. So let's start at the beginning. Our audience is pretty versed in sailing, but what's the Women's America's Cup? How did that come about, and what is it?
Yeah, so I think we know that the America's Cup is probably, the oldest living sporting trophy that's still actively competed for. It's 173 years old, and I think we know from watching it as sailing fans, there haven't been a lot of women that participated in it in the past. There have been all women's teams in the past and incredibly successful campaigns, but then for some reason, especially all through the 2000s, we haven't really seen women make the jump or step up onto the cup teams. And so the Women's America's Cup was set up to be a standalone event that ran side by side with the America's Cup, really with the goal of upskilling female sailors to hopefully have women return to the big America's Cup teams in the future. It was the first ever Women's America's Cup. It's the Puget Women's America's Cup, which was super exciting, and raced in AC40s, which is sort of a 40-foot monohull foiling sailboat that speeds were anywhere from 30 to 45 knots, which was, they're like fast go-karts. And the format started in fleet racing and then ended in a one race winner take all match race.
So I know we were talking about the format and how there was two groups. There was the teams that already had AC teams competing, and then the teams that were invited. And so we were really, fortunate to have Canada invited for this event. And I know you were, essential to that process. Tell me about the format and what it means for Canada to have been invited.
Yeah, so there were 6 invited nation spots for this event, and it was by application. The applications opened back in October of 2022, so a really long time ago. And I found out about the event actually earlier in that year, sort of springtime. Had heard rumors that there might be this Women's America's Cup, and as soon as I heard about it, I knew Canada had to be there. Because if you weren't involved in this, you were going to be behind. And we've seen in the past there have been Youth America's Cups, but there was no Canadian team present. And I think we feel that in Canada. Like, it's hard to see a pathway to professional sailing. It's hard to see a pathway to the America's Cup. And so I knew that this was Canada's opportunity to get there, both on the youth and on the women's side, to really start opening those doors. And I made a point when I knew exactly the time that the entries opened, and I said Canada is going to be the first entry that Team New Zealand receives, like the very first application request. And really, we put a lot of effort and put a lot of work into presenting a very complete application. And it was difficult because we don't have much experience in the foiling side. We have Sail GP, of course, but it's limited to a very few number of sailors, most who did not actually qualify to participate in the Youth or Women's America's Cup. So we had to work with Team New Zealand to show them that we could be a competitive entry, not only on the sailing side, but also on the sponsorship and marketing side as well. And so it was a big effort between myself, Royal Vancouver Yacht Club, and the early board members who got the ball running and went through I'm going to say, the really hard growing pain stages of actually getting our entry confirmed to compete.
And when you say there was a application process, was that like you had to prove you had sponsors, or you had to prove you had good sailors? or yeah, what was involved in the actual application?
Yeah, it's definitely who the yacht club was on the entry was quite important on the sheet from recollection. And then who else do you have involved? Who do you have coming in as a coach? Who's going to help as a manager? What kind of experience do they have around boats like this? So it was really quite a complete application in that side. And then it didn't take long for the application to turn into phone calls as well, with the right people having the right conversations. So it very much was still like an America's Cup team, that there was more paperwork involved than sailing in the early days.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot, and a lot of the guests I've had, there's been a kind of like, if we don't do this as country, as we don't like put our focus on foiling, we're going to fall behind in sailing in general. And there's been like, the weekend foil program and the Sail GP and just like, I actually think we're doing a pretty good job as a nation. And so yeah, what's it mean to you and to Royal Van and so forth that you had a Canadian entry in this incredible event?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge for Canadian sailing. And I think what maybe is lesser known is our team mission and value statements that were made by the sailors actually had very little to do with this team and with this cup, but it was all about setting a foundation and inspiring the next generation to keep going. And so for us to make sure that we were there right now and to be continuously working forward to keep building this, it means everything in terms of what I wanted to see happen for the sport. And I think I've been personally really inspired to see sailors who trialed for the team were not selected to continue on with their foiling and to be out racing in the Wasps and in the Moths now, and to continuously be pushing forward. I mean, to me, that's the biggest success that we could have had, is to see the excitement for foiling and high performance sailing in Canada right now. So yeah, that means more than anything that actually happened in Barcelona for me.
So, you were talking about the next generation and so forth. And I think all of us as fans of the sport and of the Olympic program, to see that Emily Bugeja, also a former guest, made it onto the Olympic stage and got so much better. I know that you were involved when she was on the podcast. She mentioned your involvement in her campaign. So that's got to be a great example. And, that must be a great success story for you to have been involved in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was so happy for Emily and loved following her time at the Olympics in Paris and knowing more about her journey to get there. I think it shows the power of just setting little goals and breaking the big dream into smaller attainable goals and just staying focused on the process. And I think I think there is like a theme for sure in terms of my involvement with these things. They seem very different, but it is really, I learned so much from my own Olympic sailing and running my own programs, and then being involved in a professional side in my post sailing career as well, and bringing those two worlds together. And I really want to see Canadian sailing continue to grow and to thrive. And I want our country to be one of the powerhouse nations in the sport. And so to have the opportunity to work with Emily in this last quad was super special, and to see it be so successful and for her to reach her goal of getting to the Olympics was really cool. And then building this foundation for on the foiling side as well. Yeah, I mean, I think it's what motivates me is those stories. And I really want to hopefully can keep being involved both on the Olympic side and continuing to grow the foiling side of the sport as well.
It makes me remember that for several years when I started the podcast, I guess it was only 2 years before Paris, but I kept saying how the women's 49er was going to be the big battle, and we were going to have such a great time watching it. And then without even really knowing, Georgia and Antonia went out and got it at the Worlds. And all of a sudden, where I thought there was going to be like a match race at the back of the fleet in Palma, all of a sudden that was done. But then the women's kiteboarding became the like big thing. Like that was a tight race and such a cool collection of women who, like Emily came from the dinghy world, and some of the other girls came from just like a kite foiling world. And I just it was cool that happened with that class.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope they all keep going too.
Totally. So tell me about the team you assembled, and maybe together with that, the AC40, and what the boat is like, and who maybe the positions and the boat and the women that you put together.
Yeah. We'll start with the boat. So there's 2 drivers and 2 trimmers. So two on either side, and you cannot see a thing from one side to the other. So you are completely dependent on what the other side of the boat is telling you. And had some many good funny moments on that for sure. And then drivers are not only driving the boat, but they're also basically putting in inputs for an automated flight controller on the boat. And so when we first sort of heard about this AI flight controller, kind of thought, oh, great, it's just going to fly the boat for you. But you're actually really active as a driver on changing these inputs, that I almost think of it like you are basically flying the boat, but it's just doing the hard part. So rather than like on the F-50, it's almost like a coffee grinder looking thing for the flight control, where you have knobs and you can spin them really quickly to be reactive. We're pushing buttons, and sometimes you have to push them really fast. Sometimes you can push them a little bit slower. So the AI in this flight controller is basically smoothing out your inputs a little bit and then working to keep the boat flying within that. Which was really important given
That's good.
how...
Let me just
Yeah.
Yeah, let me interrupt there, because all that stuff is very interesting to me. One was I had no idea that basically if you're starboard, like, so if you're steering on the starboard side, you can't see what's happening on to port. Like if somebody's trying to cross you, you can't see them.
You can't see them. And so now for all of the racers listening, imagine doing a start where the person on starboard is driving and wants to bear off because they know that there's a boat pushing down above them, and you have somebody to leeward trying to tell the driver how far they can bear off because there's boats to leeward, while also doing all like time and distance to the line, favored end, and what are we doing after the start because there's probably a boundary not too far away. So it's the communication from side to side is something else, and was a whole new skill set just to learn and develop as a team.
Right. Oh man, the boats were so cool to watch. I mean, I thought maybe because of the racing and because there were Canadians on the water, but the AC40s, I don't know, I thought they were cool. They were really like, springy, and because all of the boats weren't as experienced as the guys in the 75s, that there was more, more might happen. And so I thought they were really fun to watch. What you're saying about the AI on the flight controller. I didn't know that the drivers were also flight controlling. It makes sense. There's only 4 people on the boat. But B, like, I don't know why this hits me, but like, it sounds kind of like if you ask ChatGPT to write your cover letter, but then you have to like tweak it so that it actually sounds like something.
Yeah, I'd almost say it's like the opposite. Like we're the ChatGPT side, where we give it the parameters of like how high we want the boat to fly. While we're then changing cant with the rudder trim, and then the AI is fixing it a little bit and making it all run smoothly and making the boat fly the way we want it to fly. So I'd say it's almost the reverse order of it.
That's so cool. All right, so tell me about the team. Tell me about who you assembled. It was a real all-star group.
Yeah, and it took a really long time for us to get there. The trials were, I think when I first sort of set a timeline, I actually wanted the team to be finalized back in January, to give us lots of time to build team chemistry. But there's no way I was going to exclude the Olympic sailors who were going through trials from being able to be involved in the team. So that quickly shifted that. And I also realized that I actually wanted very little involvement with who the sailors were on the team, because there was too many sailors that were qualified to be on the team. So I personally wasn't involved in the final selection process. That was left to our coaches,
Okay.
thankfully. And so yeah, we ended up with sitting behind me trimming was Moira Dewey, who's another laser sailor originally, but has been sailing moths for the last year, and also did quite a bit of 69F sailing as well. So a good chunk of foiling on top of her laser sailing experience. And then on the port side was Ali Tenhove and Mariah Millen, who obviously had a lot of chemistry together from their FX sailing. And so that worked out there. And then we had two reserve sailors, Georgia Lewin-LaFrance. Obviously everybody knows who that is, I think. So she was a reserve helm for the team. And then our reserve trimmer is Maggie Drinkwater, who is from Victoria and actually has a much heavier keelboat sailing background than dinghy sailing. And so I think that speaks a little bit to the skill set, though, and the breadth of skills that are required to sail these boats well. It's not just all about foiling. There's still a lot of components that translate from sailing a really slow, big keelboat and understanding loads and all of that as well. So that was our women's team
Right.
that we had in Barcelona.
Was it important though? Like, so you're on one side, you've got the skipper or driver and the wing trimmer behind you. Like, was it important that because were you doing so on the port side where you weren't calling anything that was going on that side? You were all just working on the one side that you were on.
Yeah, I mean, with the software, like if you're not driving, for example, you have capacity to look at the software a lot more around like your routing around the course, what's happening with wind shifts and all of that. And then our trimmers also, I would say,
okay.
were quite actively crossing over from side to side. So the leeward trimmer generally trims the jib, while the windward trimmer trims the main while they're sailing. But they actually have the ability to jump on each other's control panels and make sail trim adjustments. And so there was a lot of mode changes that were required in Barcelona to keep the boat foiling in the lighter breeze. And so it wasn't uncommon that suddenly maybe both trimmers would actually be actively doing trim changes on the main. And then vice versa, also commenting on jib, just again, based on what you can see. So different trimmers sitting on different sides of the boat can see different pressure coming. They see the race course differently. And so there's a lot of, they were quite active of going back and forth, from side to side, even though they couldn't see much on the other side.
Right. So there was comms involved with all four people, and that must have been a challenge. Just that not be all talking at the same time and figuring that stuff out.
Yeah, a lot of comms, and I'll say the comms differences from our boat to boat side was quite funny because you had two single-handed sailors on one side, and then a team that had sailed together for the last 6 years on the other side. So there was one side that was much more chatty than the other, and so we had a lot of work of making sure that one side spoke enough and the other side left space for the other team to chime in.
Right. And I know you guys spent time on a simulator before the boat. Like, what was that process like, learning on the simulator and then getting on the actual boat, and how different was that?
Yeah, I'd say we spent hundreds of hours on a simulator, actually. More time than I ever imagined. And when we did finally get on the boat, there was a lot of it translated over quite quickly in terms of muscle memory, of button pushing. But there was also a lot that was quite different. And I think the biggest area where it was different was actually trying to learn how to do takeoffs in light wind. Because the simulator, obviously, you can't backwind the jib on a simulator like you can on the water. And you also can't, on the water, we were able to get out of our cockpits to actually have like more weight to windward during the takeoff phase, and all of that. So again, it almost feels more like a dinghy in that sense. But on the simulator, you can't do that. So there was a lot of quick learning that had to happen on the water for those skills that you can't practice in the simulator. But then the simulator was really great for a lot of things, especially for trimmers, of just knowing what button to hit when without having to look down at their screens. And then I think the most fun part of the simulator, I'm not sure if people realized, but we could actually race other teams. So all of the cup teams and the invited teams, we could race each other on the simulator, which was awesome for working on comms, and sort of bringing it back to sailing rather than just playing a video game by yourself. So we also did a lot of racing on the simulator.
And were people better on the simulators than on the water? Like, who was the kick-ass simulator team? Did they end up being the team that actually did great on the sailboat? You don't have to tell me. It might be weird, but
No, I'm thinking, I'd actually say one of the best teams on the simulator struggled the most out on the water. And I think I'll say because we had to do a simulator regatta that was required by the Cup. And you could sail the boat in a certain way in the simulator. It was really fast. And if you tried to sail the boat like that out on the water, you would not make it around a race course. And so we were very aware of that and sort of joked and said after that regatta, okay, we can't sail the boat like that anymore. And so some teams, I don't think were quite as aware of that right at the beginning. And so they had a bit of a bigger struggle out on the water.
man, that just makes me think of a great event that you should have where, because you can e-sail, e-sailing becomes this big thing, and some of the best sailors in Canada are actually really great e-sailers. I think Lee Parkhill's like really good at e-sailing. So we should do the same thing. You have to do a regatta in lasers on the e-sailing one weekend, and the next weekend you actually have to race the boats and see who wins.
Combined scores too, to make it a little bit more interesting.
Right. So let's get into the racing. I know that you guys were in the hunt you were in the hunt the whole regatta, really. But yeah, kind of take me through in broad strokes how the regatta went.
Yeah, the regatta itself was a little bit challenging. I think the first day of racing, we had some hiccups for sure, but we kept just trying to sail through the fleet, which was, I think it's never easy to do that in any sailboat racing. And so the fact that we were able to do that, I think is a testament to the work that we did as a team. We, in the last race on that first day, finally had the start executed the way we wanted it to. And we say that where it's like you look at the starts and you go, no, that wasn't our plan. But in light air foiling boats, sometimes you just have to keep the boat foiling more than anything, and you end up not exactly where you want. But it was really nice as a team to execute that last start. And then it was just unfortunate at the Windward Mark Barroway. Just a little miscommunication between Allie and Mariah unfortunately led to us falling off the foils, and sort of knocked us back again. But again, we were able to reset as a team and just keep moving forward, which, yeah, I mean, I think it really is a testament to the work that we did, because we'd never sailed together as a group of 4 other than this. I'd actually only really met Ali and Mariah in May of this year as well. And so the fact that we were able just to reset as a team and keep moving forward, I think was pretty impressive. And then I think the strangest thing about this regatta was you never actually knew when you were going to race again, because the cup schedule would just change things around. And I remember one of the days we were supposed to race, and I woke up and at like 8 a.m. this text message came through from the race committee being like, "Oh, racing's canceled for the day." And we're like, "Oh, okay, I guess we're not racing today." So when we finally got back out for our second day of racing, we were really excited for the conditions, shifty, offshore. Ali and Mariah, that's sort of their favorite condition to race the 49er FX in. Moira and I both loved it as racers as well. And yeah, we were ready to go as a team and to move up the leaderboard. And the first start was hectic but fun, and we hit all the shifts upwind and we were totally in it. And I think the hardest thing, one of the hardest things to transition from any dinghy to a big boat like that is just pulling off windy jibes, and making sure that you don't nosedive if you come out with a little bit too much power. So unfortunately at the bottom of the race course, just a big good nosedive, which, yeah, I mean, it looks dramatic on video for sure. It's actually not that bad on the boat. And we knew we lost our wind gear, and we just sort of looked around and went, like, if we get up in foiling, the best we're going to do here is the 6th, and we don't have wind gear, and then we probably won't have time to swap it for the next race. Like, let's just accept our fate for this race. It is what it is. Get the boat set and go back and do the next race. So we were all set, ready to go. We did still
just to stop, like,
yeah.
When these nosedives, like, I remember watching, like, it is really dramatic when you watch it, but then the cameras, when they just show, like, you guys driving and stuff, it doesn't look all that bad. Like, you're kind of locked in and you're just behind the steering wheel and away you go. It's not like doing a pitch pulling a Hobie 16 or anything.
Yeah, I'd say the windward side. So that was Ali and Mariah. Yeah, Ali was driving, and so she kind of knows what's going to happen, and so she's just hanging onto the wheel, and you kind of have the wheel. You can push yourself backwards and brace. On the leeward side, I had a little bit less to hang on to, and the trimmer on the leeward side is also not expecting it. So I think there's a good slow motion of Moira, like, headbutting the sail. And yeah, I think you see me sort of push my hands straight out in front of me. I think we were going about 45 knots when we pitch pulled. So just under around 90 km an hour. So if you imagine crashing your car going that speed, it's not all too fun. But it's, yeah, you just kind of get shaken around a little bit and keep going. But yeah, you want to brace for sure. And I think somebody on the boat even said brace. I think Ali might have yelled brace over her comms. So we had a bit of a moment to react.
Was that the race where you had the, was that the race that you had the protest with the Dutch team? Was that race 5?
Yeah, that was race 5. So that was the hectic start that I was referring to.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, so again, we talked about how you can't really see anything. All of a sudden I saw this boat coming across our bow when we're on starboard, and you sort of have to stop your racer instinct and actually just go into safety mode and try to get the bearway to happen, which I give Moira so much credit trimming behind me that we pulled that off, because we were sailing angles that were not very fun angles, and that higher wind strength. We're pretty much right in the power zone, but got through that, hit protest, then next thing I knew, I saw them tacking above us as we were also lifting our board. And then I just see this boat start side sliding into us and just hearing screams coming off of the Dutch team. And at that moment, like it was a scary moment for sure. Again, I think a miracle we didn't actually collide and hit protest again. And then we heard a couple penalties. I think they got another penalty for not clearing their penalty right away. And then we got a really nice apology from them back on shore, where they're like, we were just out of control. So it was, windy day, not a lot of practice in the boats. But again, everybody got through. There were no collisions, nothing. So
good. So so I interrupted you before you were going to go into race 6, which is the really dramatic and heartbreaking part of this story.
Yeah. Race 6. So called for a little time delay just to finish doing the wind gear swap over. Race committee gave it to us. All good. Tacked over. Allie slipped while we were tacking, and so I'd mentioned how to help with the takeoffs. You're actually out of your cockpit, and so Allie just slipped, and so she went for a little slide. Mariah came and pulled her back on. It looked really dramatic on the screen. I saw the replay after and went, "Oh man, they made that look so dramatic," but she just slipped. It was all good. But got Allie back. Popped up onto the foil. We're on time for our start approach, everything. We knew our next move was a jibe. Set up for the jibe. Allie gave the all clear on traffic, hit board down, and heard the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life. I looked over the board. I think we've posted the video from the onboard. There were some swear words that came out going, what was that? And all we had was spray. And so again, we were going 45 knots. And so at that point I was like, we need to find a way to get the boat stopped. Headed up, put the boat down, radioed almost immediately for assistance. Just saying like the boat's broken. Little did we know that the boat was about to shut down also, and so we were about to lose all controls of the foils that were left, the sail controls as well. So we lost that, and then it was
it was going to shut down like a computer shuts down, like Control Alt Delete kind of thing, or
so like we lost the ability to do any mast rotation. The foils wouldn't move anymore. We lost the rudder function. It was basically like a computer goes, I'm broken, I'm shutting off. So it was a little bit hectic. But I think in that moment we didn't know what had happened. We had no idea how any of this happened. And we were like, did we break the boat? Like we were just sailing. Did we hit something? Like, did we drop the foil and hit a log? Like what exactly happened? And it was a couple hours later, we found that there's a very important bolt that actually holds the foil ram in the boat. This bolt is actually covered by a case. So in order to tighten the bolt, you need to take the case off. Nobody knew this bolt was there. And so basically every board up, board down, the bolt was just wriggling itself loose. And so it was just an unlucky push of the button. Multiple other boats were a few board drops away from having the same thing happen when they checked them back on shore. And so there was nothing we could do. And there's actually very little the shore crew could do because no one really knew about this. And so as exciting as the AC40 is, we need to remember it's a brand new boat that's out on the water sailing. And so there's going to be a learning curve for not only the sailing, but also the technical and the maintenance and the upkeep of these boats. So it was just a really unlucky way for us to end our regatta, not getting to actually sail much on that last day. But I mean, a testament to the shore crew. And for those that don't know, Chris Nicholson was our coach. I don't even know how many times he's raced around the world, but I was very happy to have somebody with his knowledge helping us through that, getting the boat secured, making sure all the people were okay as well. You quickly realize like how valuable certain skills and life experience are in those situations. And so in the end, it was an unfortunate way for us to end our regatta, but nobody was hurt, which was a big one, because when you're going 45 knots, things can quickly go really sideways if the wrong reaction is done. And so, yeah, we made all the right decisions at the right time, which I'm very proud of our team for doing that.
Right. And like, like you say, like 3 more boats could have happened. It could have, the arm could have come down on top of somebody. So it's good that it happened and no one got hurt and they were able to fix the other bolts.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sounds sort of terrifying.
I mean, I did make the joke. I was like, if you break it, you buy it. Do we own this AC40 now? Is that how this works? And so thankfully we were not actually blamed with breaking it. And so no, we did not accidentally buy an AC40 at the same time.
That's funny. So what's next for Isabella Bertold and your sailing? Let's just say sailing, because there's so much other stuff going on that the Whitecap podcast might not be as interested in. So what's next in your sailing life?
Yeah, what's next? That's a really good question. I really miss racing, like really, really miss just racing. And so I have some different racing adventures planned next year. Everything from some smaller boat stuff into some bigger boats as well. I did a little bit of offshore a couple of years ago and definitely planning on doing more of that as well. And I'd say I think stay tuned for other exciting things coming more in this space as well. And then beyond that, I'm really excited about the 2028 Olympics being in LA. I think there's tremendous potential in Canadian sailing right now to do some really exciting things. And so definitely hoping to get involved with some of the sailors that are have their eyes set on performances there, and to see how I can support them on their journeys and their path to those games. So I think there'll be a little bit more on the mentorship side as well, but there's definitely a lot of sailboat racing planned in my future, and a little bit of a stay tuned answer for you there.
Geez, I feel like I almost got a scoop. I feel like I almost got Isabella Bertold is doing another campaign for 2028. Could be on a foiling kite, or it could be
No, I will say if it were to happen, it would be in a laser for sure. I think of all the Olympic classes, it'd be the boat I'd pick and choose. But no, I don't know if you'll see me lining up, but I mean, never say never. Mike Lee got back in a laser, so never say never.
Yeah. Okay. You could just, jump in the boat for the figure out the 3 trials, get in there and kick ass.
We'll see. I'd say I think more likely to see maybe Lee Parkhill make a comeback, or Luke Ramsey.
Okay. Luke just came second at the Sunfish Worlds. He's not done.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Isabella, thank you so much for coming on the podcast again and for telling us the story of the America's Cup, the Women's America's Cup. And just we're very proud. We're, as a Canadian, or I am anyway, as Canadian sailing fans and media, it's been a great story, and look forward to more America's Cups in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And I hope everyone that listens to this goes out and gets out on the water, either a slow boat or a foiling boat, next time they have the chance.
Excellent. Okay, Whitecap continues with the second portion of our interview with Georgia, Lewin-LaFrance, and Andrew Wood, who were the skipper and port helm for the Youth America's Cup, which happened before, and we are showing it second. So stay tuned, sit back and relax, and enjoy part 2 of the America's Cup. I'm with team leader Andrew Wood and port helm Georgia Lewin-LaFrance from Canada's entry Concord Pacific Racing, who placed 4th in Group B, narrowly missing out on the semifinals by 1 place. And this phrase is used way too often, but I really do, having watched it, I think it was a gutsy performance. So congrats and welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
So overall, how would you say, what would your words about the event be? Like a 1,000-foot view?
Well, I'm not sure if we're quite at the 1,000-foot level yet. We're still pretty close to it. But yeah, I think overall we're really excited by how we did. I think we were obviously pretty disappointed to miss out on the semifinals and being so close. I think we sailed really well on the last day, which made it even tougher. But yeah, overall it's been a great experience.
Georgia?
Yeah, completely second what Andrew said. And I'll add that it was probably one of the most fun sailing I've ever done in my whole life. So that's definitely something.
Maybe you can take us. Maybe you can kind of take us through the boat itself. Is that kind of what you're talking about when you say it's like the most fun?
Yeah. The boat itself is amazing. Yeah, I think that adds a lot of it. Just the style of racing. Also the fact that it's 4 people on a boat. I'm kind of used to only being 2 people. That also adds a bit of fun.
Right, but not like 12 or something like the AC 75s.
Yeah,
I found it like as a spectator, I found it really cool and really I know if the 12 cyclors or whatever they have on the 75s are kind of annoying to me. Like that whole that whole idea, like let's do it. Let's be electric. Let's only be the sailors who are actually no disrespect to the grinders, absolutely all, great athletes and sailors and stuff, but I think it's okay that we just have the sailors racing. What else, like Andrew, what can you tell me about the boat in terms of, sailing it, how it handles, just what it's like to sail an AC40?
Yeah, I would agree with Georgia. It's one of the, probably the most fun boat I've ever sailed. I think the cool part about it is that it's a really, really fast foiling boat, but the boat handling is very doable and doesn't cost a lot on the race course. So it's kind of one of the few foiling boats that I've seen like be able to race like a very conventional style racing boat. So that part's pretty fun. And then obviously just the speed and the responsiveness of the boat. And then working with 4 people is really satisfying when you get things right.
So you feel like when you say not a lot of loss, like you can do quite a few maneuvers more than you might in some of the other foiling classes per leg.
Yeah, for sure. For sure you can do quite a few tacks on an upwind, which is pretty nice to see.
That's cool. The Youth America's Cup has been sailed for a long time. I couldn't find out exactly, but it's at least since 2013, and this is the first time that a Canadian team has competed. Like, that's awesome. Congrats to everybody involved in Concord Pacific Racing. Like, how did you guys get involved, and what's been the experience with that team?
Yeah, I think the original idea was Isabella Bertold's, and she got things up and running. And then there was a board put together who we give great thanks to for all the hard work and the funding that they acquired. And also they obviously got on Concord Pacific and some really big title sponsors that made it all happen.
Yeah. I think, I guess it started like probably a year and a half ago about for me with, a lot of credit to Isabella for making this sort of come to life. But yeah, we were basically down doing a 69F regatta in Pensacola, and she sort of brought forth the idea and that it was going to happen. And yeah, it's I've kind of just been doing this ever since then. So it's been a pretty fun experience to be through it the whole way through, and it's definitely not easy, and it was quite a long road to get here, which I think just made it all the more satisfying to be on the start line during the regatta.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, again, watching, I know that, there was two divisions. There was the invited teams and the teams that were already sailing. I imagine all the teams that were, weren't invited had had time on the boat, right? And you guys spent most of your time, or a lot of your prep, on the simulator, right? So how did it feel to get on the water?
My first feeling on the boat, like obviously I was super nervous because you're putting in all the practice that you've done in the simulator to real life responsibility and reliability. But it was an incredible feeling because right away the helm, like the feeling on the helm was so responsive, and like it was just an incredible feeling. Basically, the boat I think is really well designed. So it sails really well. It's easy to sail right away, relatively. So that was really, really satisfying and an awesome feeling.
Right. And then Andrew, like in that first practice, I don't know if it was the first practice. It must have been the first practice where I saw it. And I think you guys didn't make it to the start or had some kind of technical issues. I mean, this made it such a more of a redemption story. But tell me about that first day on the water.
Yeah, the first day was especially tough for a couple of reasons. I think the conditions were really difficult. We had a very, very gusty, shifty offshore breeze. So it made it quite hard to sail the boat. And we had a couple of training days in some much easier conditions where we were able to just sort of throw the boat around as we liked. And I think that was pretty different from the offshore day. So I think that mixed with a little bit of nerves from sort of the whole thing becoming real with our group. And yeah, I think it just ended up being a bit of a tough day. I think we came out of that day being a little bit disappointed, but also knowing that we could sail a lot better than that. So we weren't like super worried after that day, but yeah, it was definitely one where we were a little bit shaky after, but it turned out to be, okay.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I did sort of say it, but this A, Group B thing was the invited teams were Group B, and the A teams were teams that were already connected to syndicates that were training all along. So the first race, though, the actual first race, was super exciting as a spectator. I would put it way up there, and as one of the Canadian races I was able to watch live over the last few years. I mean, you could take me through it, but I think you pretty much won the start, but were over, I think, or had a pre-race penalty, and then you hit the boundary, and so I think there were three penalties off the start. But then you pulled it out, and you, like sailboat racing can be, you never gave up on that race. So yeah, tell me about that first race in Georgia.
I mean, we knew it was going to be quite a light wind day, and we knew staying on the foils was a priority, and also popping onto the foils was going to be a huge priority. So when we were kind of heading towards the boundary in the pre-start, we were off the foils, and then we're really trying hard to get back foiling. And yeah, it sort of happened that we were about to pop, but the boundary was coming fast. So we decided just to sail outside the boundary and take the penalty. Unfortunately, it took us a little bit too long to get enough speed to complete our jibe. So we sailed farther out of the boundary, which caused us to get another second boundary penalty, essentially. So then we got back in, did a nice little dip start, but then we were carrying a penalty, and it was really hard to scrub it because the boat that they were referencing us to get behind hadn't crossed the start line yet. So we were like sailing downwind for what seemed like forever. And then, so that made it pretty tough, but
Well, to fill out that point, I remember listening. I think that I heard the umpire, the race committee say, remind you, I have to remind Canada that you need to finish your penalty, right? Did that happen?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, our screen we were sailing downwind and Georgia was driving and I was on the leeward side, and my screen said like 400 meters to kill, and I was like, "There's no way that's a real penalty. Like, that's full of
Oh
Star Wars."
God.
Yeah.
So, and then Georgia, like, kind of take me through the rest of the race and how things progressed.
Well, after we finished killing the penalty, we were so far behind. Like, we honestly, it was just about reading the wind and trying to stay on the foils, which almost no one did. No one stayed on the foils, so the whole race turned into just trying to find bits of pressure to pop back up onto the foils, and they shortened the course because the wind got so light, and then we ended up crossing the finish line in second, which was so exciting, I think, because we'd just been so focused on the process that I don't think any of us fully realized that we'd passed all the boats, having been so far behind at the start. So yeah, that was a nice feeling and a good way to start the regatta, I think.
I think I heard your comm say, Georgia say, I want to confirm that we crossed the finish. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was great to watch again. Then we went through the rest of the regatta. You got a fifth, a second, sixth, 5, 6, 3, 3. I mean, it was a roller coaster, eh? We'll talk about the last day with more specificity, but if you take me from the first day and through to the last day and these kind of ups and downs, Andrew, what was it? How are you guys feeling? What was it like? What was the vibe?
Yeah, I mean, I think the second day of racing for us was a huge day because we ended up doing 5 races because of some scheduling issues with lack of wind or, the other pool having lack of wind and stuff like that. So that part was pretty tough to have such a big day, and it was quite a wavy day. And
it was very wavy. It wasn't quite wavy.
Yeah, it was super wavy, and so it made the boat really hard to sail. I mean, anybody who's sailed foiling boats knows that waves are kind of the enemy when you're sailing a foiling boat. So it made it really challenging, and it was quite windy as well. So it was a condition that we really had never seen before. And yeah, our first race that day was definitely a bit of a struggle, sort of just trying to figure out how to get the boat into a good mode and an easy mode to sail and put all the pieces together. So we struggled a bit in the first one, and then the second one was quite good. We sort of put the pieces together and found some good settings, and we're starting to feel confident. And then, to be honest, after that, I think the day could have been a really good day. We just had a couple of mistakes that put us out. We were in second, a pretty comfortable second going into the finish line, one jibe to go, and unfortunately had a pretty big issue in the jibe, and that put us back to, I think, fifth, which was definitely disappointing. But I think the results from that day don't really reflect how we sailed the boat. So honestly, we were pretty happy after that day. Obviously a little gutted with the results, but happy with our progress in how we were sailing.
So I guess with that in mind, maybe we can talk about your coach for a second. Kyle Martin, kind of coaching superstar in Canada. What was the process in terms of kind of learning the boat and his, how his involvement was like, and just getting up to speed?
Yeah, I can take that one. Kyle's been great. Kyle has a lot of experience in doing a lot of things that we needed to get to a good place in the boats. And I think a big strength of his was, even when we were with we were lucky enough to get a few charter days on the French team's boat, which was super, super helpful to us. And Kyle was amazing at getting the footage and the data and the comms all organized and ready for debriefs and then debriefing and sort of just looking, because a lot of us are pretty new to it and we knew what we knew from the simulator, but it took a lot to figure it out on the water as well. So yeah, that was just insanely helpful, and yeah, we're super grateful to him for that.
Georgie, I think if I'm correct, you sort of got together with the other team a little bit later. And maybe you can talk about integrating with the crew and also the other people on the crew, and how you guys got on with each other and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I'd done like a few days here and there throughout the winter, coming to Barcelona between like training camps and regattas, but definitely these guys have been here like putting in like 8-hour days on the simulator day after day. So when I got here after the games, I knew I was like basically stepping into a really intense project that was going to require my full focus and commitment, to give it my best shot, basically to have a chance to be on the boat. And yeah, the environment that the guys created was really special. I was actually really impressed, like also because Jack, Andre, Galen, Andrew, we're all youth. Like we don't necessarily have experience that maybe the women's team would have of like extra years of sailing and competing and traveling and doing other sorts of sailing. So yeah, I think the dynamics that the team built were really, really strong, and that the team really helped me get up to speed quickly in like a super open, non-judgmental, positive, like just yeah, it was a really nice environment. I really enjoyed it, which makes it makes you want to learn and get better way faster. So big ups to the guys for having done that. That was super impressive, I think, especially for me.
Yeah, Andrew, like, tell me about what it's like to be on the simulator. I saw some footage of it, but like, that's crazy to even say those words. Like these guys were putting in 8-hour days on the simulator. Yeah. So what was it like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really, I think we kind of treat it as like, if we don't have a boat, but we do have a simulator, we might as well wear out the simulator, basically. So we spent a lot of time, but it was a really good way to get in tune with your sailing partners and to develop sort of that chemistry between driver and trimmer. And I think we really saw that when we got on the boat. Like when Jack Gogan was trimming for me, and when we hopped on the French boat, it was like, we were able to do maneuvers right away and kind of just hop into it, which was really, really fun to see. As far as the settings and stuff, it was like sort of touch and go. We got a pretty good ballpark on the simulator as far as like foil settings and sail settings. But obviously on the water, things are a little different. So definitely needed some tweaking and development there. But yeah, I mean, as far as building the skills and the muscle memory and stuff, it's super valuable. And then as well, we were able to race against the other youth and women's teams on the simulator. So that was really nice to get sort of a rhythm of like, okay, what does a start kind of like? And obviously, again,
Wait. So there's two simulators, and you're racing against each other at the same time?
So we can actually race online against any other team that has a simulator. So it was awesome. We'd have like sometimes 8 boats racing at a time on the simulator, which was really cool. And you kind of got to see like, not exactly like, you couldn't really take the exact moves that you're making on the simulator and do them in real life. But just to sort of get that rhythm of what a start sequence is like, what situations coming into a boundary you might see, and things like that, just to get sort of a lay of the land so that when we got on the water, it was just a little less overwhelming.
So there were more, because the simulators looked pretty involved. Like there were kind of parts of the hull and stuff like that. So there were 8 of them around the world that you guys could use, or?
Well, so each team had one. So there was probably at least 10 of the like big simulators that are like the ones with the actual wheel and trim stations and all that kind of stuff. But then you could also buy as a second package another license to play with like basically a PlayStation steering wheel, and then you'd have all of your functions on the steering wheel. So those people could race in the same races as well. So there was really not too much of a limit to how many people could be racing at one time.
Okay. It's crazy to think like, I don't know, to think that you could do something that complex and just jump into the real world and it feel similar? Like, I don't know, could you imagine, like, I don't know, sailing at like I know you guys are both 49er sailors, you know, some kind of like 49er simulator, and then all of a sudden just, it must have felt weird to just be able to sail it right away. Andrew, I guess since you were the first guy on the boat.
Yeah, but I think, you know, to your point, I think 49er sailing and all the other sailing I've done has also helped a ton. Like the boat is really, as much as it's super high tech and all these systems are really great, it really does come down to very similar skills that you need, and similar feel. So that was nice to see. It was nice to see things translate a little bit. So yeah, it was very satisfying, but also, yeah, kind of made sense.
Right. That's so cool. It's kind of unbelievable. So Georgia, why don't you take us through the last day? You know, I think you guys were certainly in contention going into the last day, and then you had two, you know, very good races, and that's where I really was impressed with the very last race and how you guys went for it. But yeah, take me through that last day.
Yeah. Well, you know, after coming off the second day with the 5 races and, you know, managing the new condition of the big sea state and a lot of breeze, getting into that third day was like a stark contrast because it was basically prime conditions, like maybe 12 knots, and the sea state was quite flat. And that was almost the first time where we all felt like, you know, we were making like 1 click changes that would make a world of a difference. Like we were really dialing in the boat, and it felt really, really good. And we felt like we were a strong team, basically. Like we felt confident that we were going to nail maneuvers. We felt confident that we would basically be showing up to the race course, and racing like the shifts and the wind and the other boats, and not racing ourselves and handling the boat, basically. But yeah, unfortunately, we were OCS in both of those starts, and you know, the first start was a bit more of an error, and then the second one, we really tried to learn from that mistake and not repeat it, but learn from it. And I think we must have been over by a really small amount.
Tiny.
Yeah, that was pretty unfortunate, but I think those starts were just something that would such lack of time in the boat. Like we probably erred on the wrong side in our approach, and maybe we should have erred on the side of, you know, being a little bit comfortably late than trying to push the line so hard in hindsight. But you know, we did convert those races. We gained, you know, 3 boats each race, which is definitely not an easy thing to do, and I think we were all really proud of that. So yeah, again, like there was disappointment around the execution on the starts, but we were all really happy, and like it was kind of a surreal moment having seen all this hard work come to fruition and be able to pass boats on the race course, and like passing boats like Sweden, who have had, you know, 60 days in the boat. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I always love it. Canada does seem like, just in general, as a fan, as a spectator, you know, a lot of classes were just a little bit out of the, you know, out of the real top echelon, and just to see you guys go for it, you know, rather than being like, oh, we're kind of 3rd or 4th best, so let's just, you know, try to get you guys. Boom, you went for it. You went for the pin and start, and I was stoked to watch it. I didn't really care. Andrew, what's the, like? Is it a similar? Well, maybe I can ask Georgia, since you were on the SailGP boat. Is it a similar kind of electronic, or, you know, like, do you have the same information in terms of time on distance and stuff?
yeah, it's actually, I think it must be the same software package, because it's basically the exact same. Even the race committee is the same, Mel Roberts.
Okay.
So it all felt a little bit familiar, which was nice.
Okay. So Andrew, like, what's next? What do you take from this event? What do you see going forward in terms of this experience on the AC40?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, I learned a ton through this experience. I think the skills that we've come out with especially for me, having not done any sailing of this kind or boats this size, where you have to learn everything from how to cut from the rib to how to actually sail the boat. So there's a ton of learning there.
Wait, I'm going to stop you. Tell me about cutting from the rib then. What's the skill?
It's just different because I'm so used to being on a 49er where you just swing up to the coach boat and sit there, and then whenever you want, you just push off. But there's just 2 attachment points on the rib, and you sort of have to be all ready, and there's a bit of coordination with the rib driver, and then they'll sort of spike the tow lines and kind of peel off the same opposite way from each other. And then we also did some fun things like towing up onto the foils and cutting from the tow and then straight into sailing. So those were some fun ones. But sort of just new skills that you didn't really think about when we.
It's really
in the simulator.
Cool to hear those stories as a real sailor, because like a lot of these boats, you don't even see them if it's light air. Like it's all just about getting these sexy shots of them up on the foils and everything. Like, if you watch an Acra 17 race and it's light air and the crew is trapping off the front of the tramp, and it's like, what is this? This is weird. This is not sailboat racing. So it's just interesting, as a real sailor, and my audience are pretty pretty rabid about this stuff. So it's cool to hear the kind of behind the scenes stuff. So I stopped you. You were talking about the future and what you're taking from this event for your sailing going forward.
Yeah. So I think all those lessons are going to be good ones that'll definitely stay with me. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what's next for me in sailing. But there's talk of an AC40 league and a couple things like that. So would love to see that happen. But as of now, I'm sort of just gonna, I think, go home and regroup and figure out what's next.
I think that would be great. I mean, I was really surprised about how fun it was to watch. Especially, I mean, I had quote unquote skin in the game in that there was a Canadian boat, but to watch it side by side with the 75s, it was really, really fun. The boats are kind of more lively, and the crews were, there was lots to, the level was quite different, and you were all willing to just go for it and do whatever it took to win, and no one was scared to lose on the bigger boats and stuff like that. So it was really fun to watch. What about you, Georgia? I mean, is there maybe to scoop, is there a 49er campaign still going on for 2028, or
you'll have to wait and find out.
Okay.
But I'm trying to convince this guy to get back in the 49er.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know if there's other sailors involved. I don't know if your partner is still around and available or not.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and find out.
Okay. All right. So that's actually a good way to end it. We got some teases towards the High Performance Canadian sailing event. You guys, Georgia and Andrew, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So that's Whitecap Regatta Reports. As I always say, sail fast, have fun, make friends. See you on the water.